Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together with their randomly designed and randomly created story elements and come up with a story, combining them all together. I believe this is the second installment into a multi-part series. How are you guys doing? I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. Reed, you're going to do a recap for us of what the story was last time?
Yeah, episode 1 was last time and began with Seth explaining the history of this people that we're telling the story about. And they were settlers in a new land. It was previously unsettled by sentient life forms at any rate.
Right.
And the land, the good places to settle were broke down into 3 general areas. It was a kind of a mountainous area, but had fertile land and nice valleys and a lot of resources, timber, minerals, the things like that. And then there was an area of plains that were really easily lent themselves to cultivation and for grazing, sheep, cattle, etc. And then there was a coastal area that had some nice harborage and, it was good for fishing and abundant sea life and ease of communications because of the flat coastal area, plus being, fertile for fruit and other kinds of crops. And so there were 3 people that originally settled in these 3 areas. You tend to gravitate toward places where the picking is good, so the low hanging fruit, so to speak.
Right.
And they developed. There was kind of a clan-based system where the standards they repaired to tended to be colored. The mountainous area was the reds, and the plains area were the blues, and the coastal area were the yellows. And there was an area where the mountainous area came. A valley entered onto the plains area, and then the coastal plains area, there was a kind of like a connexus. And they kind of set up a kind of a hub, center of communication and interaction more so than government at first, when things were all just not very many people. Things can be a lot less formal, and then the more people that are involved and the more industry that's involved and the more enterprise that is being undertaken, there's more need for rules and things to keep things from descending into chaos. So the council members, which were really representatives of each of the areas, they would choose from they would choose a king that would be the the head of government, the executive head of government at any rate. And anyway, as things went on, there would be different other groups that would emerge that were like on the fringes of the mountainous region bordering on the coastal plains. There was a group that was developing its own identity, and we call those the oranges. They're between red and yellow, which I thought was interesting. Also, between the mountainous area and the agricultural plains, there was a group that was kind of forming that had elements of both, and between red and blue, we called those the purple. And by the same token, as the plain, the rolling plains, Piedmont, whatever, melded into the coastal plains, you had between the yellow and the blue, you had the greens.
Right.
And as the things got more sophisticated, the council were seeking out diversity. And there was we'd been going through a little bit of an upheaval or an unsettled time, for the king had been ousted for offering unacceptable heirs. And the idea that a good strong king that raises up a good strong heir, you could have a nice comfortable succession. But so there was that going on. So there was not entirely, as things get more organized and more complicated, and there are more people involved in establishing, society more and more, they're having some struggles, conflicts. Like, and how do we got to go about choosing a new king? And there was a kind of a wild card thing that floated into the whole thing, in that this agrarian and maybe early industrialization, agricultural, mining, timber, somewhat maybe even medieval awakening onto greater things,
Right.
had some visitors, and they landed in a craft that came from space, and they sought out the leadership and announced themselves as being sent by the senders. And they said, in case you had forgotten, civilization was, the people here were seeded here by the senders, centuries ago. And now they've left in place the watchers looking down from the sky, which we know as, they probably didn't explain it to these more primitive people as this, but they were satellites that had all kinds of sensors and photography and means of keeping track of what's going on down on the planet, and cataloged by very sophisticated artificial intelligence. And they were watching the development here as the centuries went by. And when this new kind of a fanning out, a new stepping out in exploration and settling this new territory, it captured the interest of the senders back home, and they sent a delegation.
Right.
And the people...
Didn't we determine that there was some reason why they had contacted them this early? Like they were going to wait for like a longer amount of time?
Yeah, they thought that they would just let this civilization kind of bake and, and develop kind of under its own thing. But this was this new settlement, and the surprising things that were taking place seemed to be making advances more quickly than they had anticipated.
Right.
And the thing that's interesting is that the emissaries that the senders sent were they appeared to be in human form, but it was clear that the robotics weren't perfect, and that the inhabitants of the land were a little bit wigged out by the fact that they seemed a little bit weird and artificial.
Yeah.
And then they had to just break it to them, well, we don't really have bodies like you have. We just presented our consciousness into these encapsulated structures that approximate your form so that you can more easily relate to us. But we're just here to observe and try to understand what's going on with you, and it's for the sake of learning and that kind of a thing. And in private, I think the recipients of this news weren't entirely sure that this was, what do they want with us? That kind of thing.
So that's I think that's where we dropped it off at.
Yeah, and then of course this is leading to the happy ending. At which point the hero wakes up and greets his friends and answers the door, and the villain is a courier with a delivery.
And at first he's kind of shocked, but then he's just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Everything's fine. All right. What story elements did you guys have? Thank you, Reed. What story elements did you guys have? I had beginning scene, so mine's really weird. But what story elements did you guys have?
I thought you had famous person.
Thought I had beginning scene.
Oh, okay. I know you originally drew beginning scene. Okay, never mind. I have Ka-Tet members.
I have unique restaurant.
Let me just check the list real fast. Definitely says beginning scene. So I don't know. All right. Should I start, or do you guys want? Do we want to start with the Ka-Tet members? Because we still don't know who the villain is yet.
I can do my Ka-Tet members. It'll go pretty quick.
Your Ka-Tet members, well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. Well, there's 3 of them, and Gephardt is a council member from the Red, and he's seeking, seeking to encourage, further encourage the diversity movement as a backdrop for establishing a kind of a broad coalition of people to back his efforts to instill checks and balances to the kingship tendency to accumulate and abuse power. Okay, he has developed an association with member number 2 is Lexi, a young aide to a councilman from the Orange.
Okay,
and they get along. They just see eye to eye on things, and so that's helpful. And they develop a kinship with Lonzo, number 3, who happens to be one of the emissaries of the senders. Lonzo has created a hack with one of the watchers to be able to communicate with Confederates in the clandestine resistance on the senders' homeworld.
Okay, so you're setting up a lot of precedent about the senders and stuff like that. So what is it? What's happening?
Well, it turns out that the senders are a very advanced civilization, and Lonzo is part of a group back home in secret that are that think that they're pure energy life form,
Right.
highly evolved. He fears that he wasn't for this mission. He was for leaving these settlers to heck alone.
Right.
And he is sent on the mission and does not buy. He believes that there are ulterior motives, that there's
Right.
thoughts of domination and exploitation. And he is of a faction that says that haven't we learned better than this? And that to just go about the galaxy, now exploiting primitive societies that we in fact started. And, he is trying to, and he is part of a resistance, a clandestine resistance movement back home. And he has developed a means of communicating, and he has reached out to some people saying, like, okay, these senders, the emissaries from the senders need to be watched, and, be careful what you agree to and don't go along with everything they're saying.
Right.
And like I say, he's developed a kind of a kinship with Gephardt and Lexi. So that's just they've seemed to have come together, and they seem to have to be not at cross purposes with each other, and they're kind of an unlikely trio, but that's what they are.
Right. So it's two humans working with one of these energy things.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And one's like an actual elder, and one's just like a clerk to an elder.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, she's like a young aide. She is bright. Lots of people have a lot of, you don't get to be a clerk at the Supreme Court unless you're a brilliant lawyer, right?
It's like it takes a lot of.
But you got dues to pay
qualifications.
Before you get to be in on the decision making.
Yeah, for sure.
But she's young and she's passionate, and she really sees in Gephardt a true mentor.
Cool. Okay. You guys want to hear the beginning scene?
Yeah.
Okay, so the screen is black. It says 20 million years ago. A freighter is passing by a planet, right? And basically they're in trouble. They're being tracked by some other federation, some other government group, right? And they need to dump trillions of gallons of this fuel substance that they have, and they need to do it right now. And they can't just pump it out into space because that's way too easy to find. And so what they decide to do is they decide to land on this planet and to pump it into the sort of forming crusts. This planet is really prehistoric. Like there's not even life on the planet yet. And so they basically land on the planet, find a fissure in the Earth's crust, and just dump all of this fluid of this material into the planet, like trillions and trillions of gallons. Like let's say if we were to say like 1/10 of the total water that's on the Earth type of volume, so a lot of water. It's not water though. And there's some sort of off mention about how, well, don't you know if this X, Y, or Z finds this X, Y, or Z type of mineral, it'll bond and it'll crystallize, like, do you realize the value that will have? It's going to take several 100 million years in order for it to happen. But it's going to happen. Like we're essentially turning this planet into like the richest planet in several million years. And he said, good thinking. Let's log the planet and send it on to our ancestors so that they can find it. Right.
Cool.
And then that's the beginning scene. And then, hundreds of millions of years later, the quote unquote watchers are coming now to basically say, we've decided to add you to the federal, to the Federation of Planets. You're gonna become part of us now, where they have this information because it's the same planet. They have this information that somewhere on this planet there are like, trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of pounds of this now crystallized material. And whether that be like a quantum conductivity thing needed for like high power, energy transference, whether that's fuel, whether it's drugs, whatever it is, that's I'm setting up what the ulterior motive for the creatures to come are.
Okay, so
right?
I have us.
Just a second. They've left their bodies behind, so it's kind of a lie to say we're beings of pure energy. They've converted their bodies into pure energy in order to travel such a great distance. But what they want to do is they want to just basically use their knowledge to get the people up to a place to turn them into mining slaves, get them sped up on their technology to now get them to a place that they can sort of start mining this, so that when the freighters do arrive, in 100 years or so, there'll be, crates and crates the size of a continent of this stuff ready to load up and go. It's all altruistic. It's all, we want to share our knowledge with you. We want you to be part of us. And that's where the council member and the this clerk kind of first were like, wait a second, no one, we've been in negotiations. No one offers anything for nothing. Like true altruism, you're failing the test of true altruism, somehow. And then they sort of get contacted by this other alien who's, maybe he doesn't know all of it. Maybe he's just like a designer, so he doesn't know all the plan, and he's helping them to try and sort of either figure it out or figure out what it is that they're supposed to do.
Yeah, he might not be in the know, but he smells a rat.
Right.
Yeah, because he knows these people are not, like you say, completely on the up and up with all the golly gee, aren't we such good altruistic lover boys?
Yeah, exactly. And come to find out, these creatures aren't like the Watchers. They're literally just Trade Federation guys.
Of course they are.
They just work for a giant corporation, and this planet has now matured. It's been passed down, for hundreds of millions of years as the planet evolved. And then they've now made their way back to it, and it's like, oh, look at that. How convenient. Some bipedal ape descendants are here, and we can train them and make them think that we're gods and train them up into start mining this stuff, so that when we come, we don't have to do all the mining work. What were you going to say, Seth?
Something that could be a slight twist to that.
Okay.
Of course, with all the time, and they dump it on this new emerging planet, right? So this planet is in its infancy. So I know both of you have read The Magician's Nephew, which, if anyone listening doesn't know what The Magician's Nephew is,
it's the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia, and you should read it.
Or first book chronologically, actually added after Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is what people usually think of as the first book, but it's really right in the middle of the story.
All right, you are correct. Yeah. So how does that relate to this, Seth?
When they plant like a chunk of the light post, it creates a full light post. When they plant a piece of toffee, it creates a toffee tree. And so they're dumping this kind of modern jet fuel, however it is, their super fuel onto this planet. And what it was I think it was like a self-perpetuating fuel, but it was like an illegal substance because, of course, regulations and such, you couldn't have, they wanted you to keep buying, Federation fuel, to get the tax profit off of it. So what this stuff is it's something that's been tweaked on the molecular structure that it'll keep duplicating itself.
Okay.
And
so it consumes mass and replicates itself?
Correct. So it's consuming itself, replicates itself, and therefore, let's say space pirates or whatever these people, it was a high commodity because you could basically fill your tank and, in the right rationing, you'd never run out of fuel. You just have to wait a minute and it would fill itself back up because it would, so long as you had at least some, it would molecularly continue to.
Well, maybe it worked kind of like it would like break mass down, it'd like break mass. So you'd like throw in a rock, you'd like pick up a giant asteroid and just like put it into your thing, and it would like break all the asteroid down and reconfigure all of the molecules and basically just turn it into fuel.
Right.
Because creating something from nothing is a little bit too much of a stretch for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes better sense for what I'm trying to get at.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm sorry.
They're dumping it on this planet, and they're thinking that it's going to consume the planet basically and crystallize into, like the world's, the universe's biggest, diamond or whatever it is, that is just that they can break back down and, reconstitute to whatever, because it's going to consume this, and it's actually going to, in their minds, from what they understand of it, make it, 30 times bigger of a planet, and it's going to be completely this solid mass of this crystalline fuel that they can come back and mine. So they've come back to mine it, and what they found, though, is that the planet isn't necessarily bigger, and they can't, maybe with the two emissaries, they're kind of like looking for, maybe that's what kind of tees them off, as they're doing all kinds of soil samples, and as if they're really trying to, bring their advanced technology into the thing. And whether they find this out, or maybe there's a scientist on the planet that finds this out, because it was a new and emerging planet. What happened is, instead of the fuel absorbing the planet, the planet absorbed the fuel and actually broke the fuel down into a molecular thing. So now everything on the planet, the people, the plants, the animals, all have this
super growing.
Super growing. So that's why it's like everything grows so well. Everything, grows like quickly and healthy, and it's just this whole planet is a planet of abundance. And so maybe they've never had to industrialize too much because everything has been so easy. It's just like, oh, you've had enough just like within arm's reach, that it wasn't like, oh, we need to make this more efficient, or we need to capitalize our gains on this. Well, because it was just, everything was compounded and so much. And so what I think maybe they start finding, or they are trying to do, is then, because they were coming to figure that they were just going to come, mine this planet and reclaim all of the stuff that it had done.
Yeah,
kind of the opposite. And so now that's kind of the driving life, or what probably brought life to this planet was that in the first place, instead of basically doing the opposite of they wanted. And now everybody, like on the molecular atomic level, everything on this planet is not consumed by, but built out of, or has that thing built into their atomic structure.
We could just answer this with like nanites, small, really tiny computers that they came to the planet originally and let them free on the planet in order to basically convert it into from one thing to the other. But with one thing and another, something about the growing system of the planet, maybe there was like a solar flare that reset all of the nanites, and then they were just observing. And as they watched things grow, they kind of, they were looking for a job. And so they were watching things grow, and they thought, okay, so we're here. We're able to help these plants grow better and stronger. So maybe that's our goal. And then just started to do it, and therefore you have this kind of, and it permeates every single creature. Everything that's on the planet is permeated by these, and they self-replicate, and they're just in everything. And people don't know about them, right? Because they've never needed to like sort of pass the barrier of microscopes. Like you said, it's like things are way too profitable. Like we don't need to work on making things kind of more efficient or advancing science because of how easy everything is in this kind of agrarian lifestyle. I don't know if humans would actually do that. I think that the need to learn would kind of push them past that, but maybe there's sort of a regressive thing to these nanites, that they like hold people back from thinking about, like they hold people back from doing things that might make them be discovered. How does that land on you, Seth?
Yeah, no, I mean, whatever makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find a reason why this thing would do the things that it does.
Well,
what I mean?
I'm thinking that it's like for the emissaries, there's like some serious surprises here. One of the things that I think is probably the case, in that if you're a farmer or a miner or a worker in a lumber industry, for example, and you are enhanced physically, so handling the physical work is much easier than we would think of as being our human being types,
right?
And so there'd be less necessity for mechanization, for example. And one of the things they in the head emissary guy, we should come up with a name for him, that he's putting together a report saying we're not coming up with the mining opportunity that we thought we would have. However, these people are really remarkable, and the fact that they have taken to settling the new territory so completely efficiently, we realize that these people are enhanced, and it might be interesting. We could build we might be able to build a warrior class out of them to be sent. We could use them, harness them for as they would say on Dune, Sardaukar, kind of a super warrior caste that would go and help subjugate people groups around the universe that we need to use for slave labor, etc.
Right.
And that would be just like one of the things. Like they've got to come up with a reason to make this mission a success. There are some surprises going on here. While they're getting to the bottom of it, they're seeing some, hey, these creatures are really, really dynamic. We can make use of this.
Okay, so what if this story takes place like hundreds of years after the Watchers came, and you have a classic Goa'uld and Jaffa kind of dynamic, where the Watchers pretend to be these really overpowering people, and they have subjugated these changed and very powerful people from this planet and basically use them and all their children as their own personal army.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And so the story takes place with the hero sort of learning about the history and learning about the sort of the how these people are just aliens. They're not gods.
Right.
You know, your classic Teal'c storyline.
Right. Yeah. What we got here is we got the Colonel, we got Daniel, and we got Teal'c is our Ka-Tet.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say the hero is kind of your Teal'c character. You're like really powerful warrior who feels like something's wrong. There's the government that's still in place, and it's such a fake government that they've been given colors. That's how they've been reduced to deciding who they are.
Yeah.
Right. And there is a third one of these creatures that has been able to work his way into their society by pretending to be part of them, but really he wants to free these people, this entire world who's just kind of enslaved.
Right.
Seth, what's your story element? All right.
Oh, sorry. I had my thing muted. I had to say something to the kids.
Okay.
Forgot to unmute
What's your
it.
story?
My
What's your story
element was unique restaurant.
Okay, this is the place where the hero meets with the Ka-Tet members in order to sort of kick off the story. Let's hear it, Seth.
So it's like a really ritzy place, but it's
love it.
But it's
like the restaurant at the end of the universe.
And I know. I mean, no, more like imagine if like is it Gaston's from the Ratatouille, like bourgeoisie, like fancy restaurant met
Okay.
Chuck E. Cheese, except the cuisine that was all the rave, like that's all they served. So it was like Chuck E. Cheese, like was a pizza place with then like a game place for the kids,
Right.
amusement. That's basically what you have. You have it's like fine dining, except the food that is served is peanut butter sandwiches. So it's like peanut butter and different jellies or different, let's say, nut butters or different things of that nature on different kinds of bread. So it's just, but it's all just peanut butter sandwiches. So it's like you have like the fancy menu and you come in, it's like, oh, I'll have the marble rye with the acorn butter with the spring apricot, marmalade. Like, oh, might I suggest, the Chateau, Delioff, whatever they call fancy wines. I don't know if that's what it is. It's like, oh, this, would complement the marble rye, and the
right.
But that's what it is.
Do they serve chicken nuggets?
No, I was thinking like they have like the only other dish they serve is like a macaroni and cheese, because remember it's kind of like it's really fancy, but it's more attuned to like a child's lunchtime.
Okay.
But
okay.
super fancy. Like that's like the cuisine of these people is like the epitome of fine dining is like oily legume paste with fruit topping between different kinds of bread. And like if you're really not in the mood for that, then like a gluten heavy noodle with melted cheese on it is
so
a
just
good
unironically
second.
all they eat is peanut butter and jelly and macaroni and cheese.
Not everybody doesn't eat that, but that's all that's served here. Different kinds of
yeah.
Imagine like fine French dining, but it's all about like a peanut butter sandwich. So it's like, that's like the finest marble rye or, the most delicate, potato bread, that's fresh, or, a croissant roll or a bagel with, just the hint of whatever, spice, or sesame bagel with, an acorn butter on it and strawberry preserves.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay.
And
that's cool.
But then of course it's like if like at a Chuck E. Cheese, if your kid didn't like pizza, well, you could order him chicken nuggets. Like sure, we've got chicken nuggets too, but like if you don't like, the fineness of, legume paste on bread, then, I guess you could have gluten noodles with cheese.
Right.
But then there's like a side thing where then I guess it'd be like a casino. It's like set off on like a, where then it's like you can walk into the other part of the room while you're waiting for your fine stuff, and then you have like little mini like gambling tables and whatever they're like, little rat races or card table, like like basically like a Vegas casino kind of thing,
Okay.
off the side of it.
Cool. So this is where the hero meets with the clerk and the council member guy, right? They decide to finally show him their hand because he has been disciplined numerous times now for going against what the overlords have basically said what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And maybe something about the restaurant, they just the creatures just don't go into.
Well, yeah, it's like the perfect clandestine meeting place because it's from somebody off world, they just don't get it, and like, why pay a lot of money for this?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, what do the Ka-Tet members? What do they talk to the hero about? Like, what's the path? Or do they have to convince him? Or is he himself thinking that the people are not gods or whatever? You know, that they're not. Or is he? Are they kind of like, you're the most powerful of us. You should, not believe this lie that they've been trying to tell us for hundreds of years.
Well, yeah, and then when it's revealed that one of the sender's emissaries, Lonzo, he basically says, "Yeah, we're not gods. This is all we are. And this is what they're about." And obviously, it's clear now as they're using the population here for their own purposes, and I'm here to join with you to put a stop to it. Because there are people back home there that know that this is wrong, and we've got to put a stop to it.
Right. So what's the are we doing like hero's journey? Is it just going to be like a rebellion? What's the glue that sticks the story together? I think we pretty much have the villain, like whoever the main emissary is from the Watchers or the Senders.
Yeah. The problem is that it's pretty smooth. It's kind of fun to be that, like, the head warrior, part of the biggest, toughest gang, and being, they've got the usual things that, camaraderie, esprit de corps, it's enticing to have this greater purpose, that the villain has offered, so it's going to be hard to get people to revolt until they feel the pain of the oppression, where the oppression doesn't feel like oppression on the surface of it.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the reason why the Senders, why they say they won't go into the restaurant is because it's not needed or useful or interesting to them. But the real reason is that their entire race is like, they have like a allergic reaction to either secondhand embarrassment or embarrassment of themselves.
Ooh.
Right? And one of this restaurant's key factors is that it reserves the right to like go over and like put a silly hat on anyone and like sing a song about them. Right?
That's good.
And the creatures just can't deal with it. It's like a stressful allergic reaction. They break out in hives and like have to like go into rehab for like, it's just like a stress thing that just happens to them. So they just avoid going into there at all, which is why the hero and the people can go in there, but also why what was the name of the emissary from the Senders that was good? Lonzo. That's why Lonzo doesn't meet them in there either. Because it's not like he's immune to it because he's good. It's just a thing that their race has.
Yeah.
And I think that also points us to the resolution for the story, which is that what comes out is that this race is kind of like the bottom feeders of the entire Galactic Federation. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the weirdos who can't like fit in with anyone else, right?
Okay.
And so like, even though the hero is like this super soldier, right, who can, stay awake for 6 weeks and like perfect aim and can like see see things a mile away unaided by any glass except for his own eyes. He's like all these like crazy things. He's just, at the end of the day, he's just a super soldier,
Mm-hmm.
It's like the universe has got like half a dozen of those. It's got a whole system of planets that are all super soldiers, It's kind of one of those things where you think that everything that's going on is really like crazy and life-threatening, and everything is like really terrible, but then you kind of zoom back a little bit and you realize it's like there's that video of that kid who's like crying because he's in water and he can't swim, and they're like, they're saying his name, and finally someone just walks over to him and just picks him up, and his feet just go onto the ground, and he's standing up to his waist in water. And you're like, oh, you weren't actually in any danger. You just felt like you were in a lot of danger because of the situation you were in. You know, I kind of have that idea as being the ending of this story, where it's like you were being picked on by the smallest and weakest alien group. And at the end, a ship the size of your planet just comes into orbit and just launches a single missile and blows up their huge mothership that at first you were like, it's going to kill us all. We've lost. You know, just like, pew, boom, and it just explodes. And then an emissary gets sent down, and they go, "Oh, thanks. Sorry, those people were on the run. I was it was actually a demotion I was given to hunt them down. That's how terribly inefficient they are." If you want to join the Galactic Federation, here's all the rules. See you guys later. Whoosh, and just goes back, and they're just kind of left there, you know, without any. I don't know. That's kind of like a funny ending, and I personally kind of like those. But what do you guys think about that? Do you want it to be more serious than that?
No, I like that. That fits in with your original happy ending. You know, it's like, oh, yeah. Oh, he's just the guy with the delivery. You know, okay,
Yeah.
we're cool.
What do you think, Seth? Should we make it more serious, or should it be kind of a silly ending?
I think
feel like you're. What's up?
I think I think the direction that it goes, I think that's fine.
I think I want a Brazil nut butter with blackberry preserves on pumper. That's the way I'm going.
That sounds really gross. I think that's the end of the. What's up?
I'm imagining it right now. It'd be like drinking dark coffee, except
with licorice.
Kind of.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about what it would taste like right now, and I'm having a bad time.
Okay, so fresh pumpernickel and Brazilian nut butter. It would have a very distinct taste, and then with the blackberry preserves, it'd be dark and rich and just tart enough. I'd go for it.
Maybe with a layer of cream cheese.
Ooh, that would make it better.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. Kind of a silly one. You know what? I'm allowed to have silly ones. I'm not going to apologize. If you like this story, I would really like to know about it. Our email address is waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. If you thought that this story was worth a listen or worth sharing with a friend, first thing I want you to do is share it with a friend. Second thing I want you to do is email me at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or at me on Twitter at @getsbettercast. Then email it to a bunch of other friends who you think wouldn't enjoy it. I bet you at least one of them would. Until next time, this has been Wait, It Gets Better, and we will see you again. Bye.